Well, greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to episode 302 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. I am your host, Rick Verbanis, and as always, I'm joined by the best gosh darn co host out there. His name is Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. All my life, I've had a habit of making speeches. Some people have criticized me for it. They may be right, because I cannot express with words the horror I feel at seeing what you've done here today. Don't you realize that in your attack, you've attacked your own freedom as well? The freedom that guarantees all ideas, both noble and ignoble. The expression that is imperative if our society is to survive.
Well said. Well said. Now I know that's got to be a cap speech. Memory serves. It seems like it was in a park or something, but I can't remember
Yeah,
what was the event.
that's great. No, kudos to you, Bob. It was actually from Captain America 275,
Uh
and
huh.
it was when he was breaking up the Nazi rally being attacked by the Jewish people who were
Oh
throwing
right.
rocks
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But Bob, great call out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I greeting you with a cap speech?
Could that have been a cap speech written by none other than J.M. DeMatteis?
It very well was.
Uh,
Yes, and one of the things I loved about JM's run on Cap was he had a lot of speeches. and
yeah.
and I liked this one because he comes off and says, uh, "I've made a lot of speeches and I might begin criticize me for it, and they may be right." uh, nice little tongue in cheek there to
Yeah.
JM on
Self-referential.
his
Yeah.
own writing of Cap. Yeah, but loved that speech as well as I did again many of them in his run on Cap.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, as Cap fans, and I think most Cap fans would say this was true. Not all, it takes all kinds, but it's the speechifying
Hmm.
that I think many fans remember the most. Yeah, they remember the villains and the story arcs and things like this, but it's the speeches that kind of stand out for a lot of folks. And
Yeah.
a well-written speech goes a very long way.
Indeed. Yeah. And I can't wait to talk with JM on the show today, having him
Mm-hmm.
back. It's been 5.5 years.
I can't believe that.
I know.
That's
If you go back and listen to episode 13, if you haven't listened to it, or if it's been 5.5 years since you listened to it, it's worth another re listen because we got into a really fun conversation and we dove deep into his stories, to his characters, to the characters that were one off characters that he brought back, such
mm-hmm.
as Baron Zemo,
Right. Yeah.
as uh, Vermin, like all these different characters that he brought back, and we talked about those. We talked about new characters he created, like Arnie Roth and Cynthia Schmidt, and so
Mm-hmm.
on. It was a great conversation, so highly recommend people check that out for issue or episode number 13.
Yeah, yeah, it would be great. It's great to it's a companion piece, right? So I mean, it's like a sequel. So in a 5.5 years to come out with a new sequel, I mean, my goodness, that's a long time, right? That's like in let's see, what movies did it take more than 5 years to come out with a sequel, Rick? There's plenty of them out there, I'm sure. Certainly not Grease 2. That could have done without that one. But in any case, long time to wait for a sequel, 5.5 years.
Yeah, I can't wait to have a conversation with JM. And also, I want to get to the bottom of how to pronounce his last name. Because remember when we had Jim Shooter on?
Yes, I do. I do.
In fact, if you go to episode 65, and if you just want to fast forward to, I mean, that was a fantastic
Yeah.
conversation. You don't want to fast forward through it. But if you're very specifically interested in hearing what he had to say about the pronunciation of JM's last name, I think it's around the 31-minute mark
Yeah.
that he does that. So that's kind of funny. Um, so
I know.
Bob, this is the end of July. The summer is flying fast.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I've
any
learned
and
not to say that.
Yeah.
You chastised me last
I
time I
do. I
said
get a
that.
little
So.
upset. Like, don't push it. I mean, we got a whole nother month. We got a whole.
Right.
I mean,
Sure.
for those going back to school in August, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But for enjoying the weather and
Yeah.
summer activities, we've got another month or two. Um, are you excited for the new Spider-Man movie that comes
I
out this
am.
weekend?
I am. I'm very excited about it. There's been, several movies I've looked forward to this summer. Summer's usually, when blockbusters come out, summer, Christmas time, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But there's been a number that I was looking forward to this summer. So, and this one is probably at the top of the list.
Yeah, me too. 100%. Can't wait to see that. But you know what? Speaking of anticipation, we should just get JM out of the green
Hmm.
room because I am biting at the chomping at the bit here to
Yeah.
talk with him.
Well, it's taken us 5.5 years, Rick. So, like, why not? Why waste another second?
The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire, the no-show. Who set you back because they didn't show up on day one, or day two, or ever again. And now your product launch is delayed because you're talking to alien abduction podcasters to track them down. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can help make sure your next hire sticks. In fact, businesses who use LinkedIn are 24% less likely to reopen a role in the next 12 months. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Our guest today is a legendary comic book writer and screenwriter, and one of the most acclaimed storytellers in the industry. An Eisner Award winner and recipient of the 2025 Inkpot Award for Lifetime Achievement, our guest has written iconic characters, including Spider Man, Batman, Superman, the Justice League, and many more for Marvel and DC and others. His celebrated Spider Man story, Kraven's Last Hunt, is widely regarded as one of the greatest comic book stories ever told. Beyond comics, he's written acclaimed graphic novels such as Moonshadow and Brooklyn Dreams, as well as screenplays and animated films, including Batman vs. Robin, Superman Red Sun, episodes for Justice League Unlimited, Batman Brave and the Bold, and more. Today, he has two new comics hitting the shelves. What If Spider-Man, number one, returning to his iconic Kraven's Last Hunt storyline for a reimagining of what happens if Kraven survived his final battle, and Rocket Raccoon, Rocket Rewind number one, which celebrates 50 years of the furry weapon specialist. Cap fans, of course, know his work from the Volume 1 series between 1981 and 1984, writing 36 issues between Cap 261 and 300. We are very excited to have JM DeMatteis return to the show. JM, welcome.
Happy to be back. It's been a while.
It has. It's been 5.5 years. Um,
Wow.
so we've got a few questions, but before we get started, talking about your career and your upcoming projects, I feel like we need to set the record straight with our listeners. Um, Over the last 5.5 years, we have had dozens of guests come on the show, and occasionally your name comes up. And when I pronounce your name, I sometimes get corrected. In fact, when we had the late great Jim Shooter on, episode 65, he made a point to say that he always referred to you as Mark DeMatteis, and that you even corrected him that that was the way to pronounce it. And could you please set the record straight on the pronunciation? And if it did change, why and how long ago?
Okay, so the real authentic Italian pronunciation is DeMatteis. When my family came to America, as often happened, it got squashed into DeMatteis. So DeMatteis is acceptable. And growing up, DeMatteis is what we said. But my father always used to say, but the real way to pronounce it is DeMatteis. So when my daughter was about 10, I told her this. And she said, so if that's the real way to pronounce it, why don't we pronounce it that way? To which I said, duh, you're absolutely right. And so I kind of shifted to DeMatteis. But lots of people know me as DeMatteis, so I accept both. I prefer DeMatteis because it's the real way to go, you know?
Okay.
So you are correct, and Shooter was correct.
Okay. All right. That is so, that's a relief because uh, back in 1984, Marvel Age 12, they had the official
Right,
Marvel Comics
right,
personal pronunciation guide, and they had DeMatteis there.
right.
Um, so yeah, I'm glad we set that straight.
Right. And then, a few years back, we went to Italy and I went to the town in Calabria where my grandparents were from. And the way they pronounced it was even slightly different. They pronounced it DeMatteis with just like one long,
Oh,
as
wow.
opposed to the, and I said, I'm not changing it again. That's enough. It's DeMatteis and that's where we're stopping.
That's great.
That's awesome. Um, over the years, in our Facebook group, we have the tie-in with the March Madness brackets that go on. We have our own Cap Madness bracket, and every year we do a different topic. And you have been a fan favorite. In 2023, we had 32 writers battle it out, and you were voted to the final four, and lost out to Mark Grunwald. So no
That's
shame
fine with
there.
me. Fine
Yep.
with me.
And then this year in 2026, we did the top 32 favorite Cap stories of all time, and you had Deathlock Lives made it into the Sweet 16, and The Death of the Red Skull made it into the Elite Eight. Are you surprised that your Cap stories still resonate so much with fans today?
For me, it's not still resonates because what I look back on is when I was writing the book, it sold okay. The reception was okay. I never thought that people were loving it in any way, shape, or form when the book was coming out. It was years later when I'd be going to conventions and people would come up and want to talk to me about that Cap run. So I didn't start to see a real positive response till, probably decades later. So it's delightful to me that it seems like I don't know how, when, or why, but people either caught on or people that were like 10 years old then and didn't have a loud voice are now grown-ups, and they're like, no, this is my favorite Cap story or whatever. Whatever it is, I'm delighted that this run is held in high esteem because, like I said, at the time, it was like the vibe I got was, it's another fun Marvel comic. It's nothing exceptional. It's nothing terrible. It's just sort of there. So it's very gratifying to see the response that it gets now.
I want to ask you, Jam. So Cap's been around for what, 85 years now, right? He's appeared in about 900 issues of his own title across the Golden, Atomic, Silver, Bronze, Modern Age. He's had hundreds of appearances in the Avengers and in other series, other titles. He's had dozens of one shots and limited series. What do you think accounts for the enduring nature of a character like Captain America across something like 5 generations? I mean, he's still a popular character. What's up with that?
Yeah. These things are kind of inexplicable, I think. So I'll give you my answer,
Mhm.
which may not be the answer at all. And it's just that to me, this character, and it applies universally, but let's just start with the United States. He to me is the essence of the American dream, not the American reality, the American dream. Everything is that is best that we are aiming for, and that we inevitably miss the target, but we've achieved some of it. But he is that dream, and it's something to aspire to, and it represents hope. And I think, characters that represent hope are very powerful, and they resonate
Mhm.
in the collective unconscious. Um, and so I think that's a huge part of it. And I think it doesn't just apply to the United States because the dream that he represents is bigger than just one country. That's the way I've always viewed it
Mhm.
because those ideals that he represents are things that I think anyone in any nation where there's at least enough freedom to be allowed to dream would aspire to. So I think that's it, and then hopefully you ground it in a character who's also a human being that you can relate to. Steve Rogers is a good and decent man. So you have this representation of the American dream, and you have a good and decent man carrying that dream on his shoulders, and it still doesn't explain it because there
Mhm.
in the end these things are just kind of down to chemistry between not even between the writers and the audience, but between the character and the audience. Because as we know, these characters live on way beyond those of us that write these stories. way beyond, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby and
Mm.
Stan Lee and Steve Englehart and me and anyone else. Um, so they for some reason the characters at last seem to really resonate in the collective unconscious. They represent something valuable that we need, whether we realize it or not. So we embrace those characters. That's
Mm.
my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah. Well, if you, I'd like to put you on a spot a little bit and maybe build on that a little bit. So over the decades, Cap, across many different writers, has
Right.
appeared in hundreds of story arcs, right? He's given up the mantle of Captain America several times. He's lost his powers more than once. He's been falsely accused, imprisoned, broken out of jail, had to prove his innocence over and over again. He's been dead more than once. Um,
I almost killed him. They wouldn't let me.
That's right. That's right. So, I mean,
300,
has it all been done before? Is there anything new under the sun? Is everything just from here on like derivative and a rehash? Can
There's
Cap still be original?
Yeah, well, I won't limit it to Cap. I'll limit it to any character.
Mm-hmm.
I think the challenge as a writer, especially with these characters that have been around forever. I mean, there are people still writing new Sherlock Holmes stories today. Talk about a history. Um, I think the challenge as a writer is to look, and for me, it's always from the inside out. It's the psychology of the character. It's the emotions. To look inside that character and find some little area that hasn't been explored before, psychologically or emotionally. Or with Cap, if I always say that a great Captain America story is writing within that gap between the dream and the reality. Well, our American reality is constantly shifting. So that gap is shifting, which also leaves room for more and different stories. But I'm always more interested in what's going on in here, in their head. And I think if you really push yourself, you can always find some other corner. I found corners in Batman's psyche and Superman's psyche, and they've been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the challenge. And sometimes you can't. So you just want to tell a good, solid story with some, psychological and emotional meat and some good action and a strong theme. And there's nothing wrong with just telling a good story. And all stories trip over each other. Every story you see, you can find the seeds of 100 other stories in. It's just the nature of storytelling because we as a race have been telling stories since we could speak, and probably before when we were scratching them on cave walls. So the cliches will repeat, but you can always enliven those cliches with a little bit of, because every writer, every artist brings a very unique perspective. They bring their own experiences, they bring their own point of view. And that's why you get to see many interpretations of these, quote, iconic characters. It's an overused word, but I guess in terms of some of these characters, it's the correct word. Because we're all writing from a slightly different perspective. I was just saying to somebody recently, it's like we have our experiences, we have our lives, we have our unique perspectives, and we meld them with these characters that also have lives of their own. And each writer that comes along really leaves, like, there's a piece of myself in Captain America that will always be there. And each writer that comes along leaves a piece of themselves, and it expands and sharpens and defines the character in a different way that the next person builds on. That's also the whole thing about a shared universe. None of us are doing this alone. We're only going to be working with this character for a limited amount of time. Grunwald had that long run, but one day that run was over, and on to the next guy and on to the next guy, or girl. There's always room for a breath of fresh air and originality and a new take.
So speaking of a new take, a more recent concept, at least since the years that you were writing the character, has been taking one of your favorites, Sam Wilson, and who you helped flesh out during your run, and becoming the new Captain America when Steve was de-aged. However, Steve came back and Sam remained as Cap as well. And there's been no shortage of debate among Cap and Falcon fans about, having two Caps at the same time. As someone who helped establish Sam, you had him as a social worker, a grassroots activist, more capable hero on his own and outside of Steve's shadow. What are your thoughts? Do you think there's room for two Captain Americas at the same time?
You know, it's not just Captain America. We've seen that over the years. Back in the 90s, it was Thor and Thunderstrike, and there was Iron Man and War Machine. And I always felt like, not saying that those comics weren't good and didn't tell great stories, but when you're duplicating a character, I always feel it dilutes the brand a little bit.
Mhm.
So I think, they may be the greatest Sam Wilson Captain America stories in the world. I'm not judging the stories, but just from me, from my perspective, if you've got two Captain Americas, then you've just kind of taken that energy and split it in two. I mean, actually, back in the day when I had that aborted story that they killed, the end result was going to be that Cap was going to be assassinated by the Bucky of the 50s, and and I was going to either replace him with Sam Wilson or a character that I had in my run called Black Crow, who was a Native American. So I was going to twist it that way. So the idea of Sam Wilson becoming Captain America, to have a person of color or to have a Native American become Captain America is a great idea. But so that's not the problem. The problem is just diluting the brand, I think.
Hmm. It's more of the at the same time as opposed to
Yes.
a
Yes.
someone who takes up the mantle.
Exactly, exactly. If Steve's not Captain America and you have 5 years of Sam Wilson as Captain America, that's fine with me. If Sam Wilson is Captain America forever, however much I love Steve. But when you have them both happening like I said, War Machine, Iron Man, well, they're essentially the same character. The guy in the suit is different. Thor and Thunderstrike, they're both flying around with a hammer, and I know they did it with other characters as well. So that stuff never sat well with me. But in the end, it comes down to telling good stories. So if you're going to have two Captain Americas, then let's make sure we have great stories with both of them.
Speaking of important and great characters, I think many fans would agree that Arnie Roth, who you created with Mike Zeck back in Captain America 268, has turned into a very important part of Steve Rogers' backstory in his mythos. But he's also become something of an important touch point for readers from the LGBTQ plus community. And I was particularly struck by your backup story in Captain America number 750, titled The Hero, which paid tribute to Arnie in a way that hit a lot of readers like me, for instance, in the feels. Just a beautiful, beautiful tribute story.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and Roth's backstory has subsequently become further enriched. He played a very big role in the Infinity Comics Avengers Academy Marvel Voices series.
Yeah, I have no idea what's been done with
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing what they've done to his backstory. And,
oh, that's great.
And the way that they, his bravery and his courage in World War II and his role as a mentor and father figure in the community. And they introduced an Arnie Roth Community Center. And also he played a prominent role in a story in last year's Marvel United, a Pride story, which was a one shot. So I want to ask you, is it gratifying to see that character that you created has become so meaningful to so many readers?
Well, before I answer that question, let me ask you, these are flashback stories or is he back from the dead?
No, they're flashback stories.
Oh, okay, because it's comics, everybody comes back from the dead eventually. So I just wanted to make sure. It's interesting and it's profoundly gratifying. When I was writing Captain America, and I don't even know if I was doing it consciously, my idea was Cap represents America, the broadest tent. He represents all of us. His best friend when I came on the book is Sam Wilson. He's a black man. His girlfriend was Jewish. And so when I brought in Arnie, and I think I wasn't thinking from here, I was thinking intuitively, it made sense to bring in a gay character, which in 1982 or whatever it was, maybe it was even 81. I look back now and that was a pretty revolutionary thing to do. Yeah. But you're never thinking, oh, I'm doing a revolutionary thing. You just, this would be a really cool character to bring in the book. I love the idea of this person from Steve's past who knew him as a child, who also, they lifted a lot of Arnie's story for Bucky in the first Captain America movie. He was Steve's protector. So we weren't playing with any gay tropes or cliches. He was the tough guy. Steve was the weakling, Yeah. And I loved that character. But again, back then, weirdly, there was not a lot of like, oh, look what they're doing. It wasn't a huge response then. The biggest response I had was some editorial responses where they went in and rewrote a few things because they thought it was too overtly gay. It was all pretty clear anyway. But there were a couple of times where the editor-in-chief went in and rewrote a couple of things. But then years passed, kind of what I was saying about the whole run. And so many people have reached out to me to tell me how much that character means to them, and it touches me. It really touches me deeply. I think it's a beautiful thing. If anything we write means anything to anybody, let alone people who sometimes find themselves in positions where they're struggling and suffering with their identity, and they see this thing in a comic book, and it helps them. You can't ask for anything more. I mean, it's in a comic book, and it goes out there and it touches people's hearts. That's a great thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I continue to see it. People continue to reach out and share their stories with me. It's great.
Yeah, periodically, even in the Facebook group where, I mean, we have, over 5,000 members, Arnie Roth comes up time and again, and it has become a very important character for a lot of folks seeking that representation. So
That's great. That's really great.
yeah. So I do want to ask you, you mentioned an editorial, editorial comments here and there. And, Cap has taken on right-wing militias, bigotry, drug cartels, corrupt governments. And we know comics have always been political and provided commentary on contemporary social issues. But do you think, are there any third rails that you think comic writers in general, or Cap writers more specifically, should steer clear of?
That's a really good question. You know, I don't think, even though the stories can get political, I don't think of Cap himself as political.
Mm.
But that's because of my point of view of what the American dream is. If the dream is that it's a fair and equal country for all of us, that's not political. That's what America is supposed to be. Now, if you don't believe that, the minute you hear that, then that's political. If you don't believe that certain people should have certain rights and you should, well, then suddenly it becomes political. I don't see it as political. But again, when you're dealing with that gap between the dream and the reality, it's going to get political. But I think the thing is, you don't want it to feel like, I don't know, a documentary on the current state of our country. I mean, you go back to the stuff that Engelhart did with in the Nixon era. I mean, that was pretty in your face and pretty strong. And yet they were also great big melodramatic comic book stories that you could enjoy just as a great big melodramatic comic book story. I think if the thing gets too heavy-handed, too in your face, then you can deal with all those issues, but give people a great story and great characters to take along with it, I think. And I think so there's a fine line there. And I think if you tip over a little bit too much into, here I am telling you about my political beliefs and blah, 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 then I think you're going to put people off, even people that agree with you,
Mm. And this will be our last question about Cap, but you bring up something that reminds me of when we had Mark Waid on, and Mark, he had several runs on the character over the decades, and he mentioned when it comes to political that he felt he finally said he said, like, I put a I understood exactly what it was finally, I think, on his fourth run, and that was Cap didn't represent anything as far as political except maybe the Bill of Rights, and that was his perspective. But he also said that it's become so political that he doesn't think he could ever write a Cap story again. Could you ever write a Cap story again?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't see why I couldn't, I mean, because when I'm writing a story, I'm not writing it because someone else wrote a story that was like this or that. I'm going to write my story from my perspective. So yeah, I absolutely would, and I would love to.
Well, that makes a lot of us very happy to hear. Hope springs eternal. So, Jam, we want to talk about one of your new comics coming out today. Today's the release of the What If Spider-Man, and which I think that the timing is purpose, right? Because we've got the new Spider-Man movie coming out. So it's great to have another new Spider-Man story on the shelves. And this is where you return to, as I said before, perhaps your most famous work, Kraven's Last Hunt, and you reimagine an alternative direction for the original story. What can you tell the listeners about the story, and what brought you back to it?
Well, what brought me back to it was they asked me. People always think that sometimes there's a lot of deep, profound reasons why a certain story comes about, but usually it's some editor calls me up and say, "Hey, you want to do blah blah blah," So the problem, not the problem, the issue for me was, do I want to go back to that well? Because that original story was done, and I've done a lot of offshoot stories over the years with Kraven or Kraven mythology, at least, or things that relate to that story. Or I did a story last year. It was in that Spider-Man Black Suit and Blood book that explored the character Joe Face, who shows up in Kraven's Last Hunt in the first few pages. So little bits of adding to the mythology. And my first response was, Kraven again? I don't know, And what often happens with me is I think about it, I go to sleep, and I wake up in the morning, and while I've been sleeping, my unconscious mind has been working and working, working, and I wake up and go, oh, what a cool idea, So if there's an idea that excites me, I'm ready to go. And the right levers got flipped in my brain. I found a story that I liked, and off we went. I had a great time. I'm very, very happy with the way the story turned out.
So you had said previously the chemistry between a character and a writer is the same as the chemistry between people.
Yes.
You either click or you don't. What is it about Kraven the Hunter that you clicked?
I think we probably talked about this before. When I first came up with the idea for the story, what Kraven wasn't even in the story. I was going to create a whole new villain. And one day I was reading the Marvel Universe Handbook because I didn't feel like writing, so I needed to waste some time before I started writing, and came across the entry for Kraven. And I don't know if it had ever appeared in a story, but whoever wrote that article in the handbook said that Kraven was Russian. As someone who like devoured Dostoevsky as a teenager and young adult, something clicked in my brain and I understood him because from Dostoevsky, I understood the Russian soul. I understood the duality and the pull of opposites and that drama and that passion. And all of a sudden, I was like, I know who this character is. It just clicked instantly. I threw out the new villain that I was working on and put Craven into the story. And we know what happened after that. So sometimes it's just you have a fundamental understanding of who this person is. And it's not a character, it becomes a person. I know this person. Same way I feel about Peter Parker. He's a person to me. I know this guy. I know him. I often say better than I know some of my best friends because I know everything that goes on in his head, at least when I'm writing him. So there was just some fundamental connection via Dostoevsky from me to Craven, and that allowed me to open up all that backstory and reframe the character and reshape the character. So, and again, working on this issue, it was the same thing. It's like, okay, it's been a while, but it's like running into someone that you knew 20 years ago and you kind of pick up where you left off. So that fundamental understanding between us was still there. If I had started writing and that fundamental understanding was not there anymore, I would have been in trouble.
Mm.
I have the same feeling every time they invite me back to write another, Spider-Man story. Well, with this one with Peter, because there's a connection to Peter beyond being a character as a human being, as crazy as it sounds. But as a writer, you have to believe in these people 100% in order to write them. And so each time I come back to Spider-Man, it's like coming back to a friend, checking in, seeing where they are now, where I am now, and seeing what we can do together in the story. So that's kind of what it was like with this story.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated when a writer talks about getting into the character's head, and I actually am a little curious when you're writing about Craven, and you mentioned he's from Russia, or any character for this matter. Do you hear their voice, and if so, do they have a Russian accent? Yeah, always curious about that.
It's funny. There's a tone, there's a rhythm. Each character will have a specific rhythm, a specific way of speaking. I don't hear Craven's accent. I understand that it's there. Although, the truth is we don't really know because he left Russia when he was a child and lived in the United States for a really long time and lived in many other countries and things. So, we've seen portrayals where you hear the accent or whatever. He doesn't necessarily even have an accent. For me, it's about a certain rhythm and tone and attitude much more than it would be about accents. Accents in comics also, if you're trying to write them, which I don't think anyone has ever done with Craven, trying to write the accent, can get kind of goofy when you're sort of phonetically writing out somebody's accent. We've seen it in comics and it becomes sometimes reads a little silly. But I definitely, there's a unique voice to every character. Not necessarily, how do I put this? Not that I'm hearing, but that I'm channeling. It's slightly different. It's not like, oh, here I am talking in your head. It's more like, here I am coming out of the center of your chest through your fingers onto the page. It's intuitive. I write very intuitively. I may have a whole story worked out and all my tent poles set up, but once I start going, I let the intuition take over. I let the characters take over. And if it knocks over the whole story that I've planned, all the better.
Yeah. Well, to me, I mean, we had an opportunity to read the What If comic, and it's a great story, and also I want to compliment the artist because as a huge Mike Zeck fan, I think that the artist, and I'm going to try my best here pronouncing this name correct. I think it's
I've never had to say it out loud either.
I
Yeah, go ahead. You try
I
it.
I think it's Yildalrai Charnar. Uh,
Oh,
that's
maybe it is. I said because I always say Sinar, but I don't know because I've never heard it spoken. I know I think it's Yildiray. I don't know whether it's Sinar or Chinar.
okay.
Chinar sounds cooler actually. So let's go
Yeah,
with that.
but they did a fantastic
Beautiful
job with
job.
Nar.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. And the stuff that he had to do where he had little flashback scenes to the original story, you can feel the Zeckishness of it. You know what I
hmm
mean? And then
yeah,
he just kind of expands and allows his own strengths and style to come through as well. So it has the flavor of Craven's Last Hunt, but it's also very much his own work as well. And it's beautiful, beautiful work. And the color work is great. I mean, it's
yes.
just
The coloring also reminds you of the Craven's Last Hunt story as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. So I was very, very happy. Mike has basically been retired for some time now. I don't think he has any interest in drawing comics again. Um, I think he's off having a happy life somewhere.
Yeah, in the
Uh,
Philippines. Yeah,
I
so
would, I mean, I've always said to Mike for years, I'd work with him again in a heartbeat, but he's happy doing what he's doing.
yeah. So let's get to your other comic that came out today, the Rocket Rewind. It's celebrating Rocket's 50th anniversary of his first appearance. Um, what can you tell listeners about it? And number two, is this your first time writing Rocket? And if so, how did you
Yes.
get this story?
Same thing. They called me up and said, "Hey," and one of the reasons why, so without giving too much away, my story is wrapped around the original Rocket Raccoon story, the original black and white Bill Mantlo, Keith Giffen story. And I think partly because of my connection to Keith
Hmm.
and my deep, deep affection for Keith, they thought it would be great if I did the story that. So I had to come up with a fun story that would actually use the original story, not just go, and here's a reprint, you know what I mean? That it
Yeah.
actually becomes something that is part of the story. So that was really, really challenging and fun. And I think we came up with a really fun and clever way to do it. And also, I got my buddy and one of my favorite collaborators, Sean McManus, to draw it. And he is just perfection for this story, absolute perfection. So it was really, really fun. And same thing, hit the character's voice very easily you know. And I think really thanks to the movies more than anything, we all kind of know that character very, very well.
Hmm.
Such a really a little obscure character that before Guardians of the Galaxy, I didn't think twice about that character. But it's one of the first things Keith ever did when he started his career at Marvel. So it meant something to me, partly just because of, in a way, it's a tribute to Keith.
Yeah.
But it was just fun, and working with Sean is always fun, and it's goofy. It's kind of strange and metaphysical in its own weird way, and I think people will enjoy it.
Yeah. Speaking of tribute to Keith, it was nice what you wrote at the very, very end of the story. A nice little tribute to him.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I hear the thunder. Here it comes.
Here it comes. So I
It's Keith. It must be Keith.
yeah, that's right. It is. I mean, you described it as a fun story. It truly is fun. It's a short little story. It's a great tribute, and for folks like me, I mean, I'd never read that Marvel Premium story.
I'd never read it before either. It's like
Yeah, so like for
it's
me, I had to
such
go
a
back.
different character. It's like
It
almost a
is.
wholly different character.
Yeah, with a different name, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah,
Rocky Raccoon, right? And
right.
so it causes me to go back and read that story and enjoy it. And I think a lot of folks, maybe they had never read it, will go back and read it. But one of the things that you introduced in the story that I thought was really ingenious was this device called the Literomnicon,
Right.
which is a device that can transport the wearer into any book. And
Right.
and in this story, I don't want to give too much away, but it gets slapped on Rocket Raccoon's head, and away he goes. So I got to ask you a fun story. I know you're a prolific writer; you've written so
Yeah.
much, and you're also undoubtedly a prolific reader, as most writers are. And so I got to ask you, if someone were to slap this on your head, Jam, what story would you want to be inserted into?
Oh, wow. What a fantastic, fantastic question. Let me think. Some of my favorite books aren't necessarily worlds I'd want to hang out in.
Right.
You know, like
Exactly. Yeah.
I love Dickens, but really, if you were walking around in Victorian London, I don't think it would be that much fun. It'd be full of filth and disease, and you wouldn't
Yeah.
really be.
Right.
But I guess if it was within the novel where you don't really see that, then it wouldn't exist, right? So
Sure.
I wouldn't mind taking a trip into David Copperfield,
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind taking a trip into a Bradbury story, one of the more uplifting, like Dandelion Wine or something like that,
Right. Yeah.
So those are the first things that come to mind. That would be fun. That's a fantastic question. No one has ever asked me anything like that.
Oh, I can't wait for someone to come up with. I'm sure somebody's coming up with it. Somebody's working on it someplace. So maybe
On the helmet?
on the helmet, right?
You know what asked Sean to base the helmet on. And we have, because we're nerds, we have all this stuff stored in the back of our brains. And I
Mhm.
remembered, 1,000 years ago, Jack Kirby had done this story, and I think it was a Fantastic Four annual about how he and Stan would plot the stories and create the stories. And in that story, Stan had a ridiculous helmet on. So I looked up that story and I said, Sean, model this helmet on this ridiculous helmet that Stan wore in this story from 1967.
That's
And he
great.
did. Yeah, yeah.
Fun.
Oh, that's too much fun. Besides the two new comics arriving today, what else is keeping you busy? Are there any projects coming up that you can share with the listeners?
Well, there's also coming out this summer, I think it's probably in August. There's another 50th anniversary, which is Mary Jane's 50th anniversary. I have a
She looks
story.
great for 50, by the way.
She certainly, and well, when she was probably, 18 when they met, so she's much older than
That's true.
that. So there's a story in there. And then in September is Amazing Spider-Man 1000, which is allegedly the biggest single issue of Spider-Man ever. And I have a story with Humberto Ramos. If you're a fan of my run with Sal Buscema on Spectacular Spider-Man, this is a coda to Spectacular Spider-Man 200. And I
Oh,
am
nice.
so happy with the way this story turned out. So that's coming up. I had a few months back, I had a new novel that came out called Dark Future. It's a time travel tale about a writer from the 1960s who gets involved with the time travel experiment and ends up in the dystopian future of our world today. So I encourage anyone who's a fan of my, I always say with all the objectivity I have, which is none, I think this is one of the best things I've ever written. So if you like my work, I would recommend it. And then what else is coming up? I'm not sure whether it's in the fall or the end of the year. Are you familiar with Patton Oswalt and Jordan Blum have
Mhm.
this universe at Dark Horse called Minor Threats?
Mhm.
So they've invited a bunch of other people to come in and tell stories. And Kevin and I have done a one shot where we've created our own new team of strange, inept heroes in the JLI tradition, I guess. So that's coming up. I'm not quite sure the release date, toward the end of the year or the beginning of next year. So those are
Well,
some of the things. Yeah.
and man, if you're a DeMatteis fan like us, then you've got a lot of things to look forward to. And if you haven't been to his website, which is jmdmatteis.com,
It was a
make
clever name for a website, wasn't it?
yeah, it's a good thing it was available.
Yeah.
But check that out because he's got a ton of stuff on there. Keeps up pretty regularly too, with new things coming out and links and
Yeah, and little
interviews.
reminiscences
Yeah,
about past projects and
blogs.
things like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, highly recommend checking that out. Um, before we let you go, Jam, I just want to personally tell you this. I know I've told you this online before, but I am a huge fan of The Truth About Santa Claus.
Oh,
And
you're the
uh,
first fan I've met. Yeah.
I no, I gotta tell you,
He mentions it every year in the Facebook group.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
It I read. I have had a tradition. My kids are older. Okay, so my kids are 25 and 20, and but every year for on Christmas Eve, I read a couple different stories to them. And about 3 years ago, I added this one
Oh, wow.
to the tradition, and I have a hard time reading it to them without getting choked up. It is
Oh,
a beautiful
wow.
story.
Thank you. Thank you. Just so people know, it's just a little story that I wrote I don't know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, maybe more, that I put up on my website every year at Christmas. And I cannot tell you how much that means to me. That's really that touches me really deeply. That story came about kind of like the way it is in the story when my son was, I forget, 8, 9 years old or 10. came home and said, I was on the school bus coming home, and this other kid told me Santa Claus isn't real, and and the explanation I came up with for him became the basis for this story.
Hmm.
And I should probably consider seeing if I could approach a quote real publisher and put it out as a real kids book. That would be a really nice
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know I would line up for it.
But
So
it's not it's just nice that it's out there, and if you're the only person in the world that read that story and had that experience, I think it's wonderful. I really appreciate it.
yeah, and maybe someday my kids will read it to their kids.
Right. Well, that's the end of the story, right? And one day it
Yeah.
will be your turn. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, JM, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure wrapping cap with you and also hearing about your other projects. Yeah, it's just been a true pleasure.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you guys too. I really have enjoyed it. Thanks.
Take care, Jam.
Bye.
All right, Bob. We got to the finally the story behind his last name. So
Mystery solved.
I feel vindicated now.
Yeah.
So good to hear that.
It's like
But no,
watching what the Scooby-Doo gang at work, solving the mystery.
speaking of Scooby Doo, and if you like J.M. DeMatteis and you like Scooby Doo, you should probably check out his Scooby Doo work. It called Scooby Doo Apocalypse for DC Comics.
Yeah.
And this was maybe 8-10 years ago, something
Yeah.
like that. But he wrote a bunch of those. So
Those are going to be good.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to. I mean, we had a chance to read the
Yeah.
What If story and the Rocket Raccoon story. So, but I'm looking forward to his other stories coming up, especially that Mary Jane 50th anniversary. That should be fun. Talk about getting into the head of a character.
Right. Yeah. Just a wonderful interview. He said something, Rick, that really resonated with me. And I'm always. I was legitimately interested. Like, can there be any new Cap stories that are
Mhm.
original? Right. I mean, it's hard. 85 years, right? But he nailed it when he said, these stories take place in the gap between reality and the dream, and the reality is always changing, right? Because society always changes generation to generation, and that phrase really stuck with me as wow, that's really profound, right? Because there's a lot of space there between the reality and the dream to explore.
He's a very prolific writer, and I love talking and hearing about his thought process behind that. And that's one of the things that he had said previously about the relationship between a writer and a character, and you either click or you don't.
Yeah.
And I remember him even saying sometimes you realize that you'd rather read about the character than write the character
Yeah.
because you don't click. And
Right.
if you go to his website, he actually had, and I don't know if he still does, maybe he does writing courses for those who are interested in learning how to write comics or other forms. But definitely check out his website.
Yeah. Well, I definitely, as soon as he said it, my hands were moving on the keyboard, and I ordered his new book, Dark Future, because I'm a sucker for time travel books, right? I love a good time travel book. And so it sounded like this is definitely something that piqued my interest. So I was all over that as he was saying it. So on sale.
All right, cool. It's funny when he said that, I was thinking about, I was going to tell a joke about time travel.
Uh-huh.
But you didn't like it.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Come back next episode. Speaking of Spider-Man, we get into a really fun Spider-Man tale. It's a Marvel Age team up Spider-Man tale with Spider-Man and Captain America, and it's an all ages story from 2004. And but it's fun, and it's fun. Can't wait to do that one next week.
Yeah. That's going to be a lot of fun to. I mean, we're all celebrating the new movie, so what better way to do that than a team up?
Yep, and also just a little other sneak preview too, for the DeMatteis fans out there. We have covered over the course of 300 episodes several of his stories in the Cap run, but we haven't covered the Team America one. So 2 episodes from now, episode 304, come back for that, where we're going to cover Captain America 269 panel by panel, including all the voices and sound effects and everything too. So that should be fun.
Yeah. Patriotic Team America. You doesn't get better than that, right?
Yep.
So, and you get to hear all about our thoughts about the tie-in to the toy products as well. So that's
true. Yeah, that would be fun. And for those who are new to the show, check out our Facebook page, which is just go on Facebook. You can look up Cap Comic Fans, where we have over 5,000 Cap fans, and it's an oasis from the rest of social media. Why do I say that? Because it is a positive, no negativity zone only, and so we only are there to celebrate what we like. And there's no arguing, there's no ridiculing, there's no negativity, any of that stuff. So it's a great community where we chat with each other, and many of them who have been on the show. So check that out, our Facebook page. And then if you are so inclined, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. On YouTube, give us a thumbs up. We'd love seeing your comments there as well. So we really do appreciate that. And for Bob Lucius, I'm Rick Verbanis, and we thank you for listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.